Most people think they know when a story is lying. Dragons don't exist, curses aren't real, prophecies don't actually come true. And yet, some stories that are obviously false feel truer than facts we can verify. A made-up tale can sit with you for years, while a real headline disappears in hours. You forget dates, you forget names, but you remember how the story felt. And more strangely, you trust it. That's the uncomfortable truth. Some stories feel true even when they're clearly not, and it's not an accident. It's how the human mind has always worked. Long before data, charts, or recorded history, humans used stories to survive, not to entertain, to orient themselves in a chaotic world. Stories were maps for meaning, and the brain still treats them that way. Take one of the oldest story shapes we know. A stranger arrives. The land is in trouble. A test appears. A sacrifice is required. Order is restored, but something is lost forever. You can find this structure in ancient myths, medieval legends, frontier tales, even modern films. Different settings, different costumes, same bones. Logically, it shouldn't matter, but emotionally, it does. Because the brain isn't asking, did this happen? It's asking, does this explain something I recognize? That's the first secret. Stories don't feel true because they match reality. They feel true because they match patterns. Consider a simple myth. A king ignores a warning, pushes too far, and loses everything. Historically, probably exaggerated. Factually, unreliable. But everyone has seen this happen. In families, in businesses, in politics, in themselves. The story doesn't need to be accurate. It needs to be recognizable. That recognition creates trust. And once trust is there, the story gains authority. This is why myths often survive longer than the civilizations they created. They aren't preserving events, they're preserving emotional logic. Now, here's where it gets unsettling. The stories that feel most true are often the ones that simplify reality, not by making it childish, but by stripping away noise. Real life is messy, motivations overlap, outcomes blur. Stories cut clean lines. Hero, threshold, choice, consequence. That clarity feels honest, even when it's incomplete. In fact, incompleteness helps, because when a story leaves gaps, the listener fills them in with personal experience. And once your own memories are doing the work, the story starts to feel earned. This is why legends rarely explain everything. Why prophecies are vague, why endings are ambiguous, why the hero often walks away instead of celebrating. Certainty would break the spell. Now think about how we usually interpret these stories. We say the lesson is bravery, or loyalty, or good defeating evil. That's the surface reading. The deeper layer is usually less comfortable. Many myths aren't about winning at all. They're about limits. The limit of strength, the limit of knowledge, the cost of wanting too much. In Greek myths, the heroes who feel most real aren't the flawless ones. They're the ones who fail in familiar ways. Pride, impatience, blind confidence. We recognize ourselves there. And recognition, again, feels like truth. There's another mechanism at work, one we don't like admitting. Stories feel true when they justify things we already suspect. That effort doesn't always pay off. That sacrifice doesn't guarantee reward. That doing the right thing can still lead to loss. A factual report might challenge us. A story gently confirms what experience has already taught us. This is why certain war stories, disaster tales, or survival legends resonate across generations, not because the details are accurate, but because the emotional conclusions align with lived reality. Danger isn't fair. Preparation matters. Luck decides more than we'd like. The story doesn't argue this, it demonstrates it, and demonstration is powerful. Now contrast that with modern storytelling. We're used to explanations, backstories, clear motivations, moral clarity. Older stories didn't care if you fully understood them, they cared if you felt oriented afterward. That's why some ancient tales feel strangely heavy, even simple. They don't resolve tension, they contain it. And that containment mirrors life. Which brings us to the real reason these stories still matter. In a world saturated with information, truth has become noisy. Competing facts, competing narratives, endless updates. Stories cut through that not by being correct, but by being coherent. A coherent story feels safer than an accurate but fragmented reality. That's dangerous and useful. Dangerous because stories can be weaponized, useful because humans still need meaning. And this is the contradiction at the heart of storytelling. We don't trust stories because they're true. Stories become true because we trust them. That trust is built through familiarity, emotional resonance, and repetition across time. This is why a legend can feel more honest than a statistic, why a parable can outlive a policy, why fiction can shape belief more powerfully than fact. So the question isn't why false stories feel true. The real question is why we expect truth to feel factual in the first place. Because for most of human history, truth wasn't about accuracy. It was about survival, wisdom, and orientation. A story that helped you make sense of loss, power, or responsibility was true enough to keep, and maybe still is. So when a story moves you, even when you know it's invented, ask yourself this: is it lying to you, or is it revealing something you already knew but didn't have words for yet?